Hey, it's Brad Bertelli from the Keys History and Discovery Center here in Islamorada. We're back to do another live Facebook Live post talking about some of the great things we have here in the Keys History and Discovery Center. Since you can't come to us, we're going to come to you. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to talk about one of our newer exhibits, a 16th century bronze cannon, and kind of a really cool backstory on this cannon. And it's one of the few artifacts we have here at the museum that is not really from the Upper Keys. It's a Lower Keys artifact, but it does have an amazing Upper Keys connection, which I'll get to in just a few minutes. So in 1563, Juan Menendez was the major general in charge of the treasure fleet coming from the Old World to the New World to deliver, leathers and gold and silver and cochineal and all these things that were financing Spain's takeover of the world back in those days. And Juan Menendez was in charge of the La Concepcion, which was the El Capitana of the treasure fleet. There were two military ships that were assigned to each fleet, the Capitana, which was the lead ship, and the Almiranta, which was the ship that protected the rear of the convoy. Now, Juan Menendez had a pretty famous father. His father was Pedro Menendez, who had been a trusted general under the Spanish king, and they had entrusted Pedro Menendez with developing a safer means of transporting these treasure fleets from the Americas back to Spain. And one of the things that he said, or one of his rules, was not to leave Havana after about mid-August, when the tropical storms would become really dangerous. And he certainly would have imparted that information on his son, who was a young man in his 30s, who'd grown up with his father and gone on these adventures and these sojourns. And but as is often the case, or sometimes the case, sons don't always listen to their fathers. And August 15th came and passed. His fleet was in Havana. They were waiting on some other ships to join the fleet before they set off home to Spain. And August turned to early September when they finally left Havana and departed. Now, as they're leaving Havana and they're making their way up the Florida Straits, a hurricane strikes, and the fleet basically disappears. And the fate of Juan Menendez and the La Concepcion and another ship, the El Bueno Angel, was a merchant ship carrying all these treasures, back to Spain as well, were lost in the hurricane, and no one knew where those ships were. It's been a 450-year-old mystery. No one's found the ships. They thought they were more closer to Bermuda, and no one knows where these ships are. Now, what is interesting is that this is 1563 when the hurricane happens. Now, in 1565, the French have created a fortification on the east coast of Florida around the St. Johns River called Fort Caroline. And this was Spanish territory. Fort Caroline was in great position to attack any kind of ships coming between the New World and the Old World. And the King of Spain said, "Hey, Pedro Menendez, will you go take care of this French incursion for us?" And Pedro Menendez agreed, to take care of the French problem, but also because he wanted to go look for his son, who had gone missing for almost 2 years. And no one knew where he was. He didn't know where he was, and fathers and sons. So Pedro Menendez agrees, comes. They arrive in 1565. Menendez, the elder Menendez, is most famously known as the founder of St. Augustine, and they take care of the French. And then Pedro Menendez comes down and becomes associated with the Florida Keys. Now, what is really interesting, and the big Upper Keys connection between Pedro Menendez and this cannon and the Upper Keys, is that in 1573, Pedro Menendez writes a letter to the King of Spain asking for permission to kill off the Indians of the Matecumbe Indians. So this becomes the very first time that the place name Matecumbe enters the historical record. Matecumbe is one of the oldest place names in all of South Florida, and we can attribute that back to Pedro Menendez. Now, so the ship is missing. Pedro Menendez is looking for his son. He's, doing other jobs for Spain, for the king. But no one finds the wreck. It's missing for hundreds of years. And then in the 1950s, down on American Shoal Lighthouse, a couple of Coast Guard guys that are out on the lighthouse find a couple of bronze cannons. And this becomes the tale of a salvage operation looking for a shipwreck. And there are several cannons that are found, but no big shipwreck. But where this particular cannon comes in 1974, this cannon and another were salvaged from the American Shoal area, and eventually these two cannons are bought by a private citizen, a man named Dr. Rappaport, who lives in South Florida area. And at one time, these two cannons were positioned. He had them on his driveway at his house. So as you drove into his house, these two cannons on either side of the driveway are pointing out. He, in turn, donates these cannons, one to History Miami and one to the Mel Fisher Museum. And that is where that part of the story kind of ends. There is a salvage group called the Bronze Cannon Corporation, who have been looking for this shipwreck for over 50 years. First, it was the father, the Robinson brothers' father, and his partners looking for the ship. Robinson passes away, and now his sons, Paul and Bubba, are the ones who are trying to locate this ship. And Paul Robinson and I and Bubba we connected, 5 years ago, about this wreck. So I've been invested in this shipwreck. We are hoping that to maintain this relationship. But Paul brought to my attention that one of the cannons from where they think the shipwreck was at History Miami. So Paul helped me get in contact with History Miami. He kind of set up the process for us, and we ended up acquiring this cool bronze cannon, the 16th century bronze cannon, which was just sitting in the warehouse at History Miami. No one could see it. No one got to appreciate how really cool it is. And so History Miami gave it to us on a long-term loan. Didn't give it to us, but loaned it to us on a long-term loan, so it can be shown to the public. And but you can't. It was just the cannon. It was not the carriage. It was just the cannon sitting on the floor. And so we had to come up with a way to exhibit the cannon, which comes in the form of this really cool carriage that we had custom made for the Discovery Center with a guy up in St. Augustine area named the company is Campbell Carriage Works, and what they do is they make these custom really cool carriages for cannons. And this design is similar as to how this cannon would have looked on the ship. It's done from a design from a 16th century Spanish design. It's done all in mahogany. It's done. There are no nails. The ball bearings are wood. There's wax in there for the grease. And this is about a 4,000-pound cannon. And this carriage is made so well that 3 of us were able to roll this cannon from the parking lot when it was loaded onto the carriage and bring it into the museum for exhibit. And again, this is just a really cool example of both museums working together, to bring all this history to our communities. And this goes on around the world. And we are really fortunate to have made these connections with these other museums and other facilities to be able to to bring this history to life and to show people what history looks like in its physical form. So we're really thrilled to have this 16th century bronze cannon. It's an amazing part of our what we do here, of the exhibits, the stories we're telling. It's a great Matacumbe story. You know, it really brings the Upper Keys to life, and with this connection. It's a great father and son story, both with the Pedro Menendez and the Juan Menendez aspect, with a son going missing and a father coming to look for him, and then with the Robinson family too, with the father who back in the 1950s and 1960s starts looking for this cannon, and then now with the father passing, the son's now taking it and going forward. Oh, sorry. And all right, so that's my executive director, Jill Miranda Baker, giving me some things about things that I missed that I was going to say. Now, one of the really cool things about this cannon was once we got it in the museum and on exhibit, we do a lecture series at the museum, and it runs from basically October to May. It's two a month every other week, and Dr. Rappaport, who I didn't put the connection there at the time, is one of our regular members who attends a lot of our lectures. And when he donated the cannon to History Miami, he was bummed out that it was sitting in a warehouse and not being on display. So unbeknownst to him, all these machinations are going on, and we have gained, have gotten the cannon and have it on display. We have a lecture last year. He comes into the museum, walks into this room, and says, "Hey, look, that's my cannon." And I'm like, "Dr. Rappaport, oh, I get it. You're that Dr. Rappaport." So that was a really cool connection. Again, bringing up, how museums work together and how our communities can work together and bring this, all these really cool things to life. And that is going to be today's peek into the Keys History and Discovery Center, the things that we have going on. I was thrilled. We were all thrilled with the number of people who viewed our inaugural Facebook Live post on Tuesday. So every Tuesday and Thursday, I'll be back here at 10 o'clock giving more insights into some of our exhibits, into some of the artifacts, some of the backstory, some of the things that you might not really glean by just coming and seeing, unless, of course, you call and ask for a personal tour, which I'm always happy to do. If you have questions about the cannon, about anything of the museum, feel free to email me at curator@keysdiscovery.com. You can find me. I'm in charge of the Facebook page, so if you put a question on the Facebook, I'll be happy to answer it for you. And if you have questions, part of my job is to answer that and make the history more accessible. Now, on Mondays at 1 o'clock, our Moat Marine representative who takes care of our aquariums, we have 3 beautiful aquariums. He is going to be doing a fish feeding and kind of a summary, talking about what's going on with the aquariums. It's also going to be a really peaceful way to sit back and watch some beautiful, colorful fish, swimming around. That's everyone likes to relax looking at fish. That's one of the great things about having an aquarium in the house. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm looking forward to coming back on Tuesday and talking about something else. Haven't decided what that's going to be yet. So thanks so much. Please continue to support us, and thank you so much for your time. All right. See you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.